Thank you everyone for joining. For those who don't know me, my name is Tia Tomlin. I'm the co-founder of My Style Matters. We have decided in conjunction with our partner, Cancer Awareness Network, based out of Alabama, co-founded by Miss Loretta Herring, who is also on the line. We decided that we wanted to do a patient empowerment series, and we were actually going to do this at a conference in Alabama. But of course, COVID happened, so we decided to take it virtually. And through this empowerment series, we have a number of speakers that are joining us. But before we get started on today's topic about how to be an effective caregiver, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Amgen. And I want to thank our guest speakers for today. So I'll get started with our first speaker. Our first speaker is Daniel Rutherford Wilson. He is a native of Chicago, Illinois, and he is a graduate of Hampton University, and he holds a Bachelor's of Art degree in English, and he also holds an associate's degree in mortuary science from the University of District of Columbia. Daniel has more than 17 years of professional experience working in federal advocacy. Currently, Daniel is the Director of Engagement and Advocacy for United Healthcare, Community and State. In this role, he advises health plan leaders on how to engage community partners to help solve for social determinants of health and healthcare issues affecting their respective Medicaid population. Prior to this position at United Healthcare, Daniel served as a lobbyist for AARP, where he handled issues pertaining to the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act, the SNAP program, which SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Program, as well as caregiving. Daniel's experience in caregiving has spanned not only in his professional career, but also in his personal life. When his mother was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer in 1995, Daniel became her caregiver along with his aunt. He was also the primary caregiver for his paternal grandfather until his death in 2011. And most recently, Daniel served as a long-distance caregiver for his aunt who passed away from gallbladder cancer in 2017. Daniel is a friend, a husband, a father, and a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. Ciara Robinson will be our next speaker. She is a recent graduate from Kennesaw State University with a BS in psychology in hopes of becoming a speech pathologist. She currently resides in Atlanta, Georgia, and works for North Point Ministries in Alpharetta. She loves to travel, read, and binge watch a good show on Netflix. You'll have to tell me some because I've been trying to figure out what to watch. She's also a part owner of Parties by Ciara, which consists of party planning, and is the co-author of Surviving Pink that was released in October of 2019. Dr. Connie Kitchen's experience as a caregiver began 22 months ago when her 27-year-old daughter, was diagnosed with triple-negative metastatic inflammatory breast cancer. Through her journey with her daughter, she learned so much about kindness, empathy, and patience from her. Ever since July 2018, her life has been shaped by the everyday interactions caregivers have with their family members. Through caring for her daughter, it has inspired her with compassion, determination, and sense of humor, and her goal in providing is to give back to other caregivers what her daughter has given to her. She aspires to spread happiness, love, peace, and strength her daughter possesses as she maintains her quality of life in whatever way that she can, and hopefully bring a little joy to other caregivers each and every day. Thank you. Thank you. Daniel, we'll get started with you. And what we want to do is just have each one of them to share a bit about how, what their experience was as a caregiver and how they became an effective caregiver. So Daniel, we'll get started with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to join in this conversation. I think that I always tell people, you don't choose to be a caregiver. You're kind of called to the mission at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's not something you ever planned for. As you stated, my first journey really started, when I think about it, back when I was much younger and watching my mother's sister, my Aunt Florence, care for older members of our family. And as we can say within our community, we don't look at caregiving as a job. We look at it as a responsibility that we have for our elders to provide care for them in our home as best we can, until, an institutionalized setting is necessary. But that for many of us is a last resort. My mother was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer when I was 19 years old. I was a freshman at Hampton. Um, and that experience really shaped me to be able to stand here today and be educated on what it means to be an effective caregiver. Being 19 years old, being an only child, I didn't know the right questions to ask the doctors. I really allowed the doctors to kind of guide me. Um, some of those were good. Some of the decisions I can look back on them. And if I knew then what I know now, I would not have made those decisions. When she passed away in 1997, it was definitely hard for me. As an only child in college, I'm very blessed and fortunate that my mother's two sisters, who had always been there beside me and beside her, just kind of stepped into that role and made sure that, I completed college and did what I needed to do. I fast forward when I moved here to Washington, D.C. My father had passed away when I was 13 from a massive heart attack. And so my grandfather was living here in Washington, and there was no other family here. And so I became his caregiver. And, you want to talk about, stepping into a role. My grandfather was very, I don't want to say stubborn, but very determined. We'll use that word about what he wanted and what he didn't want, and what he didn't want his grandson telling him to do. But we were able to strike a balance, and I was able to really understand what his value system was and what he really wanted. For him, he never wanted to go into a nursing home. And so even as his health began to decline in 2011, and he had to go into the hospital, I made it clear when he had to have surgery, what is he going to come out of this surgery, in what condition? And when they told me that he would probably not be able to live on his own again, I knew the decisions that I had to make, because I knew what he wanted. Fast forward to 2017, and my aunt calls me from Chicago and says she's not feeling well. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And so, I fly home to Chicago the next week, and fast forward, after a couple of conversations with her doctor and some tests, we found out that she had stage 3 gallbladder cancer. But I think what was different about this moment was that because of the experience with my mother, my aunt was very clear and had been clear to me about what she wanted. She was very clear. It was in writing with her attorney about what she expected me to execute should she become incapacitated. Even as we drove to the hospital, she reaffirmed what she wanted. And that's one of the things that I think that most caregivers need to understand. It's really about having a conversation with the person that you're caring for to really understand what is it that they want. Some people want to be in, if their health declines, that they want to be in a nursing home or an institutionalized setting. Some people want to be at home. What does that look like? What do your finances look like to be able to help you live that out? Who are you putting in charge? That's one of the things that I tell people all the time. Make sure that your legal documents are in place. Because if you have children who don't get along, believe you me, when somebody gets sick, it's gonna get worse. And then you got kids in the hospital waiting room fighting. One wants this, the other wants that. And it becomes a big mess because the person who needs the care, who's at the center of all this, is forgotten about. And now it becomes a personal family feud. And so it's all about making sure you got your healthcare proxy filled out. You got your power of attorney forms filled out. And even for me, having gone to mortuary school, I always take it a step further and tell people, make sure that you have your final arrangements in order. I, as a 43-year-old man, my wife is very clear about what I want. And it's not just specific to people who are sick. I think that we have to verbalize these things because in that moment, it can become overwhelming. And people tend to make emotional decisions as opposed to making a decision based upon what that person wants. And so, just taking a notebook and writing it down and talking to people so that you can really understand how the person wants to live out their life, who they want to be surrounded by, so that you as the caregiver can make the best informed decisions as possible. Again, it's not going to be easy. No one has said anything in this life is going to be easy. But I think that if you understand what the person wants, even if you have to make a decision contrary to that, you at least are informed and you can have a conversation, as opposed to having to make a decision and really being in the dark about what that person wants or what they value.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We did have a few questions that came through, and usually I wait till the end, but I know you have to jump off of a call. I mean, jump off the line because you have a call to take. I do want to go ahead and share those questions with you,
Sure.
so that you can be able to answer them from your perspective. So how has caregiving prepared you to be a better advocate as you move forward past the caregiving experience?
Absolutely. You know, I think being able to talk about it in first person, you know, I can talk to people having been a caregiver. So it allows me to bring a different level of apathy and understanding to that role. You know, I think so many times I talk to my colleagues here in DC, I think there's so many times policies and procedures are developed in a bubble, and they're developed by people who've never even had to be a caregiver for somebody. So how can you develop a policy or procedure for something you've never done? And particularly as it relates to caregiving. I mean, you have no, you know, if you've never been a caregiver, you have no clue what it's like to walk into a situation and having to explain to someone who's been fiercely independent their entire life that they now are going to have to turn basically their entire life over to you for you to now make the decisions. That comes with a certain level of humbleness and a whole lot of prayer.
Yeah. And Daniel, we have one more question for you.
Sure.
Is the caretaker and caregiver the same? And what are the different roles of caregiving?
Sure. Yeah. So the caregiver and caretaker really are one and the same. You know, the different roles, you can kind of divide up the roles. So you have individuals who can be assigned different roles. So you have, you know, sort of your financial power of attorney, you have your durable healthcare power of attorney. And sometimes they don't have to be one and the same. And that really is someone who makes your healthcare decisions if and when you become incapacitated and cannot make those decisions. Like if you have surgery and the doctors need to do, you know, a different procedure and you're under anesthesia and are not mentally cognizant to make that decision, that person would be in charge of making that decision. The financial power of attorney is really important because that's someone who will handle your finances. They will have access to your bank account. And I tell people all the time, it doesn't have to be a family member. Again, not talking about anybody specific, but if you know your children are trifling now, they're not going to take care of your business when you're sick. So don't entrust that person, please. I tell seniors that all the time when I'm talking to them. If you've got a good neighbor, a church member, somebody you trust, empower them to make those decisions, particularly if you know they're going to keep your best interests at heart. It does not have to be a child. It does not have to be a relative. Now, if you don't make those decisions, it will revert to your next of kin. And if you're married, that's your spouse. And if you're unmarried and have children, it is equally distributed among all of your children. And that's where people have to really be careful. You got to really make sure that your children are really on one page and really understand what you want, because if one child does not agree, that ship stops.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No
and
problem.
One last question. What do you recommend as steps to do the final will talk to your loved ones? I have 2 sons and just starting the conversation is hard for me.
Yeah, you know, I always tell people, you know, don't make it a formal conversation. You know, maybe go out to a park, maybe over dinner, just have a conversation. You know, when you sit there and say, hey guys, I need to talk to you about something, you know, that makes it so stressful. If people are emotional, it makes it an emotional time. But just do something fun. Go out to the park, go for a walk, and just have the conversation and talk to them slowly about, you know, what you want to have happen. You know, if you don't want to be resuscitated, make those wishes known. I always tell people there's a video out there done by a physician in Boston that really shows what being a full coat is. Having watched that video, I would never wish that on my worst enemy. It is not a pretty sight. And so if you don't want that for yourself, make sure you have those conversations. Have those conversations slowly. You have to gauge the person that you're talking to understand what it is that they're able to take in, how much they're able to take in, answer all the questions that they might have so that you can begin to have a dialogue so that they're really crystal clear about what you want.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us and being on our talk for today. A lot of great tips, a lot of great nuggets that you shared today. And then we'll get started with our next speaker. Thank you. I know you have to go.
Yeah, I'll hang on for a few minutes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, Ciara.
Yes.
We'll have you to share your experience being a caregiver and what you've done since becoming a caregiver.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Ciara Robinson, and I was a caregiver for my mom, who was diagnosed with breast cancer on December 27th, 2017, which is a date I'll never forget. As a young adult, upon hearing the news that my mother had cancer, I felt the common emotion of being heartbroken and feeling very overwhelmed. I immediately jumped into rescue mode, however, feeling that I had to somehow rescue her from this situation. During this time, I was a college junior at Kennesaw State University, and I had the plans of graduating and pursuing my career once I finished. My mom's diagnosis totally caught me off guard, as there was no family history of breast cancer, so it was a big shock to all of us. Shortly after her diagnosis, it was decided that she would have a mastectomy and later 4 rounds of chemotherapy. And so she had treatment in Houston at MD Anderson Cancer Center. We currently live in Atlanta, so we had to figure out traveling arrangements to make sure that someone would be there with her at all times. And so I was fortunate that my grandmother and aunts were able to travel while I finished the semester. And so that brought comfort to me knowing that she wouldn't be alone. My official role as caregiver started on February 14, 2018, so the following February. My mom returned home from Texas. There were nights that I prayed about what was going on in our family and asked God to give me the strength I needed to be strong for my mom, as well as for myself. I didn't really know much about being a caregiver, but I was familiar with the term. Being that my mom and I have a strong bond, it was natural that I would be the one to help take care of her in whatever capacity she needed. It was never a second thought, and I immediately jumped into doing research to seeing, what needed to be done and how I could comfort her the best way possible. The caregiver has a key role in the patient's care, I believe. I kept my mom on schedule with medication. I made sure her meals were prepared and cleaning was done around the house, just to kind of take those responsibilities off of her because she was about to go through something, a challenge herself. I also managed to give an encouraging word or two from time to time. I think that's important, just to hear those words of encouragement. And during the chemo treatments, I prepped the chemo bag the night before. So I made sure she had blankets, candy, hard candy, flavored candy, because they do a thing that's called saline flushes, which leaves a nasty taste in the mouth. And I have provided ice for her hands and feet to help prevent neuropathy. Sometimes you're in the chemo center for hours, and it really helps that someone is there to keep the patient company. So I went to every appointment, and at first it was uncomfortable, but I knew I was there for my mom, and so I just had to go with the flow. I recall meeting other patients and their caregivers, and I felt like I wasn't alone for the first time. And it was also just great to talk to other caregivers and just get some tips from them as well. I relied on my mom's positive energy to do what I thought she would need to endure her journey. And yes, I'll admit it was a lot, but it was not possible. And she needed me, and I was going to be there no matter what. As much as I felt the world was ending because of my mom's diagnosis, I always looked at the bright side. But don't get me wrong, I did have my moments where I didn't know how I was going to get through it. But for me, journaling my thoughts helped, and relying on my faith helped me get through this situation. And As a caregiver, it's important that you don't forget to take care of yourself. That's something that I learned. I had to make sure my mental health and my physical needs were taken care of so that I could be the best caregiver to my mother. I needed my strength to be there for my mom. So, like I said, taking care of yourself as well is just as important. When I took on this role as a caregiver, I was, of course, anxious and scared, but I knew I had the strength to do so. So when you're doing what comes naturally, you don't realize you're in a role. So I never really categorized myself as a caregiver. It was just more so, it's my duty to take care of my mom, make sure she's good. Oftentimes, family and friends want to help, but may not know how or what you need. So I found that this was the case for me sometimes. My personal advice is just to jump in and be there, even if it's a phone call, a visit, dinner, even a text, just to let them know they are not alone during this time. I would like to share some tips for family and friends to make the caregiver's role easier. So I just had a few that I jotted down. Number one being, look for situations where you need help. Offer to start a meal train or drop a meal off for the family, even to offer to help with housekeeping or yard work. Number two, hold regular family meetings to keep everyone involved. Start a family group meet to add updates so that everybody's in the loop. Number three, ask family and friends when they can help, but also it's important to be mindful that everyone is busy and accept the help when you can get it. So you also have to be understanding as well. Number four, as you hear back from each person, make a list to make sure they have taken care of what you needed and be sure to share it with everyone. Research is showing that much more needs to be done for those in the caregiver role, and which are resources that I wasn't familiar with, but it's important to do your research because caregivers are just as important as the patient as well. And it's important to seek out assistance and know that you don't have to be alone during this time because it can be challenging. I did graduate from Kennesaw State University in July 2019, and I was fortunate that my mom was able to share in that celebration with me. She's encouraged me to pursue a master's in the social work field, specifically oncology social work, possibly at Jackson State University. We released our book, Surviving Teen, that came out last October, and that details our journey. And it talks a little bit more in detail about the perspective, or her perspective as the patient and my perspective as her caregiver.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We did have a question that came up, and thank you for a lot of those tips that you shared. I actually have a bunch of the ones that you said jotted down that I was going to share at the very end. So thank you so much. But one of the questions that came up, we asked Daniel the question, and we want to share that same question with you. How has the caregiving prepared you to become a better advocate as you move forward past the caregiving experience?
It's helped me in a way that I didn't know I was capable of doing. Me and my mom have a strong bond already. So being a caregiver wasn't really like a title to me. It just kind of was like, I just have to do this. I'm going to do it. And that's it. So going forward, being an advocate for caregivers is something I would be interested in because they are just as important as the patient because their mental health and well-being is important as well.
Awesome. And the other question we have for you is, what's the best thing that a caregiver can do or provide? What do you think is the best thing that they can do?
I would say just moral support. Just being there, just going to doctor's appointments, just asking the patient, are you okay? Encouraging them, just being there physically and just stepping in and sometimes not even asking what the patient might need.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your experience, and especially being a young adult caregiver. I mean, you were young, you were still in college, and I can only imagine what that emotion was like hearing that your mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. You know,
right. Yes.
In life, our parents teach us everything except that one part, you know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we don't think about caring for them, especially at a young age. We think, okay, when they get older, you know, we'll have some some responsibility of caring for our parents, but I can only imagine what that experience was like as a young caregiver. But it sounds like you really stepped in. You know, one of the things I heard you say was that you did research, which I think is important. And a lot of times, you know, I hear caregivers jumping in to do the work, but not necessarily knowing to do things like research and really understanding a little bit more about the disease so they can be even more effective in their role as a caregiver. So that was pretty awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to have Miss Connie Kitchens to share her experience with being a caregiver and how she became an effective caregiver and what she's doing now since she's passed the caregiver experience. Dr. Connie?
Hi, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As she said, I'm Dr. Connie Kitchens, and my doctorate is in education leadership. I was an educator for 32 years. I retired in May 2018. And you know, you have all of these wonderful plans for retirement, but that wasn't God's plan. July 2018, a 27-year-old was diagnosed with triple negative metastatic inflammatory breast cancer. So that changed my whole plan. Not only was my daughter diagnosed, she has a son who was born with sickle cell type SS. So he also requires a lot of, you know, caregiving and medical attention. Well, to speed the story along, I traveled with my daughter being retired. I could go on every appointment, whatever she had, I went with my daughter. And on November 22nd, 2019, she decided to take her rest in her eternal home. So she passed away, leaving behind a 4-year-old, as I said. Now, he's a sickle cell SS that now I'm having to be the caregiver. But to get through that emotional part and to tell you about my journey and what did I learn from my journey, one of the things is planning and problem solving. I feel like those are two of the most important skills for a caregiver. You have to be organized on a daily basis, being ready to handle unexpected situations. And that will reduce any stress and it will help you to care for your loved one. Caregivers, as a caregiver, I noticed that I would work hard to enable that my daughter could live as independently as possible with the highest possible care that she could get. Being an effective caregiver, as I said, it involved learning strategies for planning and problem solving. And also you need to take care of yourself. The first thing being, as I said to you, I spent 32 years as an educator. The first thing that came to my mind is I need to get educated. So with that in mind, I received, once my daughter received her health diagnosis, I looked up the information on the particular illness. What is triple negative? What's the difference between triple negative, triple positive, you know, HER2 positive, all of the different ones, because I wanted to know exactly what I'm dealing with. With the information, the way it is, first of all, it is very helpful to learn exactly some specific things about your loved one disease, like what are the expectations and the prognosis for from the medical community? What do you know about your loved one's symptoms? Are you prepared for what's coming? Your loved one, you know, they understand what is going on with their body better than anyone. So what you need to do, don't be afraid to ask them questions. I would ask my daughter questions like, how does it feel? What makes it worse? Is there anything I do that makes it worse? If so, please tell me. What do you, when do you feel good? What makes you feel good? And what are some things that I could do to help you have a better, you know, a better day? We would get up every morning, we would pray. And in our church, our pastor had taught us to get up and look in the mirror and say, Holy Spirit, what do you want me to do today? And we were allowed the Holy Spirit to guide us throughout the day, because that was important to her. She did a reaffirmation with her Christian connection. Once she was diagnosed, she went back, she joined the church, she went through some more training, she got rebaptized and all of that stuff before she passed, because that was part of her daily routine. Not only was it part of her daily routine, it was part of the whole family daily routine. We would all get up, even the little 4-year-old, he would want to say some prayers and ask God for certain things. So getting educated is one of the things. Encourage the treatment. That's the second thing I want to talk about. As you discuss the different options with your family member, they will be able to decide what is best for them. We don't know. At one point, being selfish, I say, we just wanted her, whatever the doctor said, we just wanted her to do it. Just do it. If it's going to prolong your life, just do it. Just do it. And finally, she kept saying, no, no. So we had to step back and we had to ask her why. And once she started to explain how some of this is affecting her body, how it makes her feel, she doesn't, she really didn't like certain things. So she was like, I'm not going to try that anymore. I'm just going to put my trust in God. I'm just going to allow God to lead me. So when you are encouraging the treatment, take a minute to have a conversation with your loved ones to find out how is the treatment affecting their body. Is this something that you really want? And in the end, she just decided, I'm done. I don't want anything else. If it's my time to go, just let me go. I don't want to be in pain. Don't worry about me becoming a drug addict or, you know, hooked on some drug. I just want to be pain-free. So we started respecting what she was requesting and not what we wanted ourselves. The third thing is to give freedom. As I say, giving a person the freedom to choose what treatment they want to receive, what they want to eat, because my husband, he was like, you shouldn't be eating this, you shouldn't be eating that. But in the end, she was like, no, I really want this. And like I told him, we really don't know how she's feeling or what she's, you know, maybe she knows something we don't know. So just let her eat what she want to eat, as long as it's not going, you know, it can't do anything worse than what the cancer is doing to her body. My daughter, cancer came out of her body. So that is something we had to deal with too. Not only just getting the chemo treatment and the radiation, but we had to deal with the ulcerated wounds, caring for those, because when you look at those wounds and you're saying, if this is what comes out of the body, what is the cancer actually doing on the inside of the body? So we allowed her to, she did move in with us. We convinced her to move out of her home into our home. And we just decided to allow her to live her life. We gave her the freedom. Her thing was, she came up with this slogan: we're going to create and make memories as long as we can, while we can. And we will allow her to plan what we were going to do. And she came up with some fun things that involved time with her children, making memories with her children. We got 2 different families. My family is from Southwest Georgia, around the Americas and Plain, Georgia area, but my husband is out near Augusta. So we made plans to travel with the families, to do different things with the different family so that she can make memories. We didn't spend the 16 months sitting there, you know, oh, she got cancer, oh, we got to do this. Oh, when we went to the doctor's appointment, we made it a fun journey. We did games, we sang, we laughed, we did video shoots. We just made it a fun thing. We didn't see this as a death sentence. And my daughter stayed happy until the last 3 days before she transitioned. And the only reason that was because they had given her the medication to relieve the pain. Not because of anything else, but she was heavily, you know, under the influence of the different high drugs and whatever else, and she was on the ventilator, and that was the only reason. But up until the end, she lived a very happy, positive life. If you see her picture behind me, this is the way she was up until the last 3 days before she passed. One of the other things I want to talk about is being a friend. Individuals with illness may feel isolated, especially if the severity of their illness prevents them from participating in certain activities. So one of the best things for a person with an illness is having good friends and family members that genuinely love them. And you're gonna know the ones that love them, because once she got sick, some of the people that she thought were her friends, she didn't really hear from them. Some of the ones that she was like, those are the ones who stuck near her. And they would call, they would come visit, they would encourage her, let's go out somewhere, let's hang out, let's do different things. So being a friend is one of the most important things, because once you are having a conversation, interacting with them, it keeps them from sitting there and thinking about their illness. My parents used to always say, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And we never wanted her mind to be an idle place for the devil to get in and started creating all of these unrest things in her mind. So her friends, they rallied around, we were there for her, and she just, like I said, she just blossomed. Some of her friends, after she passed, they were like, she just texted me. She was on Facebook posted 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And that is so true, because as I told you, she kept her spirit up until the last 3 days. The last thing, and some of you all have touched on this, please take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, what's gonna happen? You're gonna start having physical and mental things to happen to your body. As I said, I was on the road with my daughter, but never once did I allow it to physically and mentally take control of my body. Did I have moments when I wanted to have a conversation with God? Yes, I did. It's okay to question God. It's just not okay to challenge God. I questioned God, and God gave me answers. He sent me to places where I needed to go in the Bible to find what I needed to comfort me. You're gonna get weak, but when you get weak, once again, I turn to the Bible. If you go to the Bible, you're gonna find all of your answers. And God is never going to lead you. When my daughter died, I was sad. I'm gonna miss her, but you know what? I'm at peace, because number one, I know she got her life together. I explained to you how she did the reaffirmation and everything. As a family, we grew in our Christian walk together before she passed. And she knows that her children were left in the hands of a good Christian organization that is going to continue to teach them as long as, you know, they are around, right from wrong. And as long as her grandparents, my husband and I, we're here, we're going to ensure that the kids are well taken care of, and that they are going to, she left a blueprint in a journey as to some things she wanted for her kids. So we are trying to, as much as possible, fulfill those last wishes from their mother. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your journey and how you care for your daughter, and even her son. You know, sometimes when we become caregivers, we're not only taking care of one person, but we're taking care of multiples, especially if they have young children. So thank you so much. One question we have for you, and like I said, we asked the question to Ciara, we asked the question to Daniel, we're going to throw that question to you. How has caregiving prepared you to become a better advocate as you move forward past the caregiving experience? So what are you doing now Since you've become a caregiver, what are some of the things that you're doing now as an advocate?
Okay, from the strength of my daughter, I have become what we call a family caregiver. And I work with an organization called Caring Across America. At Caring Across America, well, Caring Across Generations, I'm sorry, is part of that one. We believe that the struggles that the family caregiver face are not due to any individuals falling short. It's due to how the inequity, how inadequate the government long-term care is and the healthcare system. We also believe that we must care for and protect one another and fight for solutions at the federal and state level. We work to build a community and find real policy solution to unpaid and paid family caregivers. We have ongoing opportunities to get involved, including National Caregivers organizing calls, actions, and town halls. Tia, one of the things that the Caring Across Generation is involved in right now is what we call the anti-racism. And what we have learned that the troubles that we're facing when it comes to trying to get care, especially for the Black people, that we face too many barriers. And right now, the access to the healthcare in the Black communities is harder, which means Black people get sicker more than, and they need more care. And if you look at it right now, we have Black people, not only with the police brutality, but we have Black people who are dying at a higher rate from the coronavirus and the problems that hurt the Black people more. That the system, when it was set up in 1960s, the Medicare system was not really set up for us. It was set up for people who were more wealthier and people of different colors, not Black people. So right now, we're also not in just the pandemic with the coronavirus and the pandemic with the police brutality. We're also fighting this pandemic with the injustice with the care that the Black people receive according to other race. So that's one of the things that we're working on right now. And if there's anyone out there who would like to join this cause, because to me, racism is racism, regardless whether it's through the police or whether it's through our healthcare or it's on our job or whether it's human or civil rights that they're violating. We should fight racism at a higher rate than people of color.
Thank you. And one other question we have for you, and before we actually jump into that, one of the things that after Dr. Connie's daughter passed away, we actually saw each other. So her daughter passed in November and I saw her in December. And I asked her a question, you know, I kept thinking to myself, when it comes to caregivers, I mean, we don't hear a lot about caregiving. We hear a lot of things in the breast cancer community. I see a lot of things that are geared towards the patient, but what about the caregivers? And so when I saw Dr. Connie, I said to her, I said, you know, I know you were taking care of your daughter, but who's taking care of you? And she, you know, she gave me this look like, I guess it was like, it was something she probably never thought about. And I think that's so important, even whether we're a caregiver or whether we have walked through that caregiver's experience and that is kind of over. We still need continuous care because, you know, it's a lot of emotional stress that we face as caregivers. And so my question, and I go back to anyone who's on this call that is a caregiver, start thinking about who's caring for you as you care for others. And so, and having some discussions with Ms. Connie, we asked her, we said, hey, you know, we want to start a caregivers program. Would you be interested in that? Because my thought was, oftentimes we as young people, we tend to care for our older parents. And because we're young and we, you know, we kind of have lives, sometimes it's a little bit easier for us. But when I think about the mothers, you know, older moms, I think about my mom, she cared for her parents. And so, but then I started thinking about, well, what about the mothers who are caring for their younger children? You know, we look at women and we say, we're so resilient, we're so strong, and we forget about wrapping our arms, even men, you know, male caregivers, we forget about wrapping our arms around them. And so I asked her that question. I said, hey, we want to start a caregivers program. And my goal was to focus on the mothers who are actually caring for their younger daughters or sons. And right when we launched the program on Caregivers Day, we did a self-care day, and we brought mothers together, and we just pampered them, because a lot of times, like I said, we forget about ourselves. I mean, just, you know, without someone being sick as a caregiver for our children, we forget about ourselves. We put ourselves last. And so I think it's so important that we make sure that caregivers are truly being cared for. And one of the other questions that came across is, how do we get other family members involved in that caregiving process? So Ms. Connie or Diara, if either one of you want to respond to that.
As I mentioned earlier, I have joined forces with different, at least 2 organizations. And Tia mentioned that she started Care Companions Matters. And in that group, we are a small group right now, but we are growing. And what we are doing right now, Tia and I, those mothers, we have one mother in particular, she lost a daughter around the same time I did. So right now she's having difficulties getting out of bed and moving forward every day. So one of the things that I try to do on a daily basis with her is either give her a call or send her a text or something, at least a couple of times a week, and engage her in a conversation, and we talk about what's going on. Then we have another caregiver whose daughter is still battling, but she just had a surgery, so they were in need of supplies. So what we did, we rallied together, we gave her supplies. So as a caregiver, to get others involved, the way I'm getting other people involved is when I reach out and do something to help that caregiver, they have to reach forward and bring someone else in. So that way, we're going to continue to have the group is going to grow, because as more people are out there who don't know where to turn to and who to turn to, once they hear a story about, you know, I spoke to this caregiver, she was really helpful to me, that's the way we're going to have to do it. As I said, with the caring across generation, people go to the website and they look at the website, they leave information. We are actually calling those people, having a conversation with those people, asking certain questions about what are some of the struggles they are having as a caregiver, and offering solution, as well as asking them to come into the group so that they can help us to reach more people. So we're going to have to continue to reach out to other people. As they say, you teach one, you reach one, and that's the way I'm taking on this. Right now, it's a few of us, but who knows, we come back to the table this time next year, I can tell you it's 500, 1,000, or whatever. But we just need to get out and we need to tell our stories. We need to let other people know they're not in this alone. This is, caregiving is not just an isolated thing. It's just like racism. It must be attacked as a group and as a whole, not as an individual.
Awesome, thank you. Diara, did you want to share anything?
Yes, I'll just piggyback off of that. And like I stated before, just offering meals, what they can do, when they can do it, just helping out, talking to them, asking what they need, or just sometimes even being an ear to listen is important. Since this is my first time being a caregiver, I'm still learning more tips that I could possibly share with other caregivers, just from my experience. So it's just good to hear how I can pass along those tips to other caregivers and learn as well.
Awesome. So one of the things that, when we think about caregiving, I wanted to share this with you all. According to American Cancer Society, roughly in 2020, roughly 1.8 million people will be diagnosed with cancer. Now, this is a stat that they came out with last year, that they, said, hey, we believe that based on statistics, in 2020, we're going to have 1.8 million people to be diagnosed with this disease. So if we have 1.8 million people being diagnosed, then more than likely 90%, I'm going to say, are definitely going to need caregivers. I would say 100%, but some of them may, be diagnosed and it could be, surgery and then that's it. Not to say that they would need caregiving, but I'm thinking a little bit of long-term caregiving. With COVID, they're anticipating more people being diagnosed and at later stages. And one of the reasons why that is because people are not getting their screenings done because they've been postponed, or people are not getting their treatment in a timely manner because of COVID and things have been postponed. For example, clinical trials have been postponed. So they're anticipating that this number is actually going to increase. And so when we think about the caregiving experience or caregivers, I looked up some statistics and I wanted to share those with you. When we look at caregiving, 58% of those who are caregivers are women. The average age of the caregiver is 53 years old. 88% of those who are caregivers are actually relatives. 6 out of 10 cancer caregivers, and these are all centered around cancer caregivers, by the way. 6 out of 10 cancer caregivers will provide care for someone that's over 65. The average caregiving time span is about 2 years. And so they consider that to be more of a short term. And the reason why they consider it to be short term because of several reasons. It could be due to someone passing away. It could be someone has finished their treatment and the cancer has gone into remission, or a person just no longer needs any type of care. 62% of those cancer caregivers are in a high burden situation. Cancer caregivers spend 32.9 hours a week caring for their loved ones, and 32% spend 41 or more hours a week, which is equivalent of a full-time job. Cancer caregivers often help with situations, they call them activities of daily living or ADLs, things like bathing, eating, helping them go to the bathroom. Then there's the next level, things like instrumental activities of the ADLs. They call that IADL, which is things like shopping, driving, helping them manage their finances. And then you have the next level of assisting with medical tasks and nursing tasks. Out of the percentage, 43% of those caregivers are actually performing complex tasks such as the nursing or providing medical assistance without any kind of prior knowledge or any kind of preparation, any kind of education about this. They're jumping into it blind, but this is what they're tasked with. 80% of those cancer caregivers report that their care recipient has been hospitalized at least one time within the past year. Most of these cancer caregivers, they do interact with the providers. 82% of them communicate with their loved ones or whoever they're caring for, their healthcare provider. 76% of them monitor the severity of their loved one's condition. 62% advocate on behalf of the person that they're caring for. And 54% have discussed their loved one's care's needs with the provider. So they're talking to their caregiver, to the provider about about the person that they're caring for's needs, but only 29% are actually having discussions about their own self-care needs. So think about that. 29% are having discussions with the providers about their own self-care needs. And then 15% of the caregivers are reporting using respite services. When it comes to caregiving for loved ones with cancer, a lot of these caregivers have experienced substantial emotional and financial implications. Like I said, there was 32% were spending more than 40 hours a week caring for their loved ones. So when you think about that, that's a full-time job. And so they're having even challenges in the workplace trying to take off. Some have had to, quit their jobs, which then impacts their own insurance. And so think about these things when it comes to being a caregiver. Half of the cancer caregivers have felt high levels of emotional stress. 4 in 10 cancer caregivers want more help to manage their own emotional and physical stress. 25% report high levels of financial strain as a result of their caregiver responsibilities. And so when it comes down to employment, I mentioned that employed cancer caregivers report the need for work accommodations such as coming in late, leaving in early, or taking time off to provide care. So that's 48% of those. Going from 24% have cut back their hours. They've gone from full-time to part-time work, and 19% have actually had to take a leave of absence. So when we think about caregiving, this is really crucial. It's just as important to learn about how to be an effective caregiver as it is to learn about your own disease as a patient, because they go hand in hand. If you're not effective in your role as a caregiver, then that really impacts the patient, and that also impacts the patient's quality of life and perhaps their outcomes. So, we had some conversations and you heard some tips, and I'll just kind of reiterate some of the things that were said. Being proactive, making sure that you're planning really good. Seeing yourself as an advocate, as being a part of the team. When it comes to caregiving, there's different levels of caregiving. There may be people who, and I think one of the questions that was asked to Daniel was there a difference between being a caretaker and a caregiver? You can have people that are directly hands-on with the patient, that's going to their doctor's appointments, that's hand-holding, asking questions, advocating for them. But then you can also have the person that maybe not live with them or be in the home with them. You could have people that, hey, they just drop things off, they pick up things, and that could be a part of the caregiver's team. So understand people have different roles when it comes to caregiving. It's also important to be able to be a good problem solver throughout the journey, especially being with there being a lot of disparities. You may be challenged with some of those issues when it comes to the provider-patient relationship or things that the provider is sharing. I remember when I was going through my breast cancer journey, I was experiencing a lot of pain, and I kept asking to, help me with this pain. And for 4 weeks, it took them 4 weeks to get me to go to pain management. And my mother had to step in and said, what is it that you hear when she says that she's in pain? And so a lot of times, again, you have to be able to step in and be willing to problem solve, still have, maintaining a positive attitude, but you also have to be assertive at times as well. Taking time to learn about the disease. I know Ciara said she did some research, and so did Ms. Connie. It was important as a caregiver, especially as health, conditions may change, is learning more about the disease so you can be that effective advocate. Reaching out to your family and your friends, reaching out to the community. Everyone, I think about my business partner, who's also the co-founder of My Style Matters. He's not a person that go into the hospitals at all, but he was still able to be there for me, but just in a different capacity. He was kind of like my mother supporter. He would, find out what she had a need for, and he would run to the grocery store, and he would step in and help prepare meals so that she didn't, she could kind of balance out her stress as well, because she had someone to help her. There were oftentimes she didn't want to leave me, so he stepped in to be able to help, but he wasn't a person to go to the hospital. So when it came to treatment, he's like, I'll drop you off, but I just, he has his own, fears of and emotions when it comes to the hospital. So reaching out to the community and find out what are their abilities and what are their strengths and weaknesses and where they can help and when. And when it comes to, planning, there's the financial planning and assistance, but there's also the legal components, making sure that the person that you're taking care of, do they have their affairs in order? And it doesn't matter what age, because at any given moment, anything can happen with their health. And just, it's a part of life. We do need to have those things in order. So making sure that they have directives, or, identifying what is it that they want should something happen to them. And don't be afraid to use community resources. There are a lot of resources that are out here, and a lot of, from a caregiver's perspective, there are even resources that actually support the caregiver to be able to offer you $500 or, you know, $100. Some organizations have, I think, like a grant of $500 that can go towards you bringing in like a nurse or something of that nature to be able to support your caregiver so you can go out and get, you know, just breathe a little. There are also organizations that provide gift cards that will allow you to go get a massage or allow you to, you know, just go do some self-care for yourself. And that's something that's important, you know. And as a caregiver, rely on the patient navigator and the social work, or I'm not going to say rely, but reach out to the patient navigator and the social worker to ask for additional resources if you need them, you know, whether it be food within your community, whether it be financial resources, whether it be assistance to help pay for co-pays or medications. You know, don't be afraid to use the community resources. That's why they exist. We are a nonprofit, you know, we have funding that we provide to our patients, whether it be to assist with bill pay or to provide a grocery card or a gas card, because that can be, you know, very expensive. So don't be afraid to ask. And a lot of times when you all don't know about those resources, these nonprofits have these resources, but then the money builds up and they don't have anyone to give it to because no one's applying. So it's so important to, you know, do your, you know, not only get that information from your social worker, but also do some research. And when we talked about self-care, don't be afraid to say no, right? No, whether it's to, you know, outsiders or even to the person you're caring for. Sometimes you have to say no. And the last thing I want to just share with you is from a, you know, tips or what have you, is connect with other caregivers. Find support groups, because there's so much information that's out there, but when you're unsure and you don't know, you won't get the information. That's why, you know, we encourage survivors to connect with people, and we also encourage caregivers to connect with other caregivers. So one of the things that I did want to share with you is, and I think Ciara said this, is having that meal train, which is something that's important. You can create a schedule to be able to provide meals or even supportive services. So this way you're organized, like Ms. Connie said, so that people can make sure that they're, you know, you have the help that you need on a rotating basis. And the other thing I wanted to, just like another little golden nugget is, when I talked about the help, it's just identifying the different types of help that's needed and then assign people to take on those roles. Through our organization, we have even helped people fill out applications, because that can be, you know, very, very challenging. And so that could be something that you could do as a caregiver, is either you could fill those things out, or you could actually work with someone to help you all to fill the, you know, documents out or forms out for anyone who has a need. What we'll do is, as we come to a close, because we've ran a little bit over our time, we'll make sure that we send out some resources for you so that you'll know where to go, some caregiving resources. Because not everyone is, you know, like I said, able to, you know, give 100% when it comes to caregiving. But you can create a team and build a team around an individual that will be able to make sure that they get what they need, because everyone's impacted when it comes to caregiving, so, or a person being sick. So we will send out a list of resources so that everyone can have and can be able to share that information with other caregivers. And if you have any other questions that we did not answer, feel free to email those to us. We will, this video has been recorded. We will post it on our YouTube channel, on our My Style Matters YouTube channel, and we will also email the information out once this is over. But in closing, does anyone have any parting thoughts? Ciara or Dr. Connie, do you all have any parting thoughts, or Miss Loretta?
I would just say, as a caregiver, just remember to take care of yourself is my biggest advice.
Awesome, thank you.
And look up those resources that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And my closing thought would be just to not try to do this on your own. You know, caring for a sick person, as I said, it's a team effort. Get you a good team of supporters and make sure you utilize them. Don't try to be the hero or the shero all by yourself.
Awesome. Thank you.
And
Mr.
thank you guys so much. I just want to say that I have truly been inspired by your testimonies and your stories. It has really sparked something inside of me. I have a nonprofit organization, Cancer Awareness Network, and I have not thought about caregiving along those lines that you discussed today. So you have inspired me to take it to my board of directors and see if we can do an arm to our program called Caregiving Team. And so I just thank you for sharing this. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.